former advisor to the Prime Minister, that is Ranil Wickremesinghe. Joining us tonight on the show is Lacille de Silva, senior public servant. Let's start off tonight's show with Lacille de Silva, senior public servant. Mr. de Silva, right here on the show, you've said that you are not a strong supporter of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's candidacy as a presidential candidate. Now, it's been exactly a month since he's been appointed as the president of the country. Have you changed your opinion now?
I must tell you boldly, yes. Basically,
and why is that?
On very good reasons. I must also tell you why I did not want to support him during the last couple of years, you know, since they were almost defeated by the, you know, at the 2015 elections. Now, I must tell you this way, why have I started positively looking at Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa at this particular moment? Because I expected him to be acting, you know, as one of the members of the same old system. Unfortunately, it does not look like that, because ours is an old democracy where we have been able to see governments being changed. And in my view, we really opposed him because we wanted the person who will definitely be able to change the whole system. Unfortunately, even in the 2015 elections, that was what was expected. People voted the then Yahapalan regime, anticipating a good change, but none of those promises were fulfilled. So naturally, even in 2019, we were not convinced that Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa will be able to do the change, because he was just one out of the whole lot. And that was how I treated him. And I was not prepared to, you know, isolate him and look at him in a different way, because during the past 10 years, I was not convinced that he will be able to stand alone the way that he is doing it right now. In a democracy where we see the institutions, you know, everything has been destroyed, let me say it that way. I would like to say, for a long period of time, there has been no rule of law. I was definitely going to say that it was almost going to be a failed state.
Mr. Silva, do you think that you have been too quick to change your opinion? Don't you think all this is a facade ahead of a general election that is expected in a few months from now?
You know, I have been long enough in the public sector, and looking at politicians, I was able to gauge the depth of people. And I had the same feeling when Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa was elected. But unfortunately, say, after ending the war, I thought we will be able to definitely, you know, see a big change, because there was hope there was going to be a wonder of Asia. But actually, it was a wonder of Asia for a limited crowd of people, but not for the masses, I would say. So based on all that, I was able to gauge the depth of the present president. And I must tell you very frankly, it's based on reasons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lacille de Silva, senior public servant. We, of course, will grill Mr. de Silva further on the way forward for Sri Lanka in the next coming couple of months and years. We are also joined tonight by Sudharshana Gunawardene, advisor to the former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. Sudharshana, interestingly, the country seemed to have got its act together. The UNP has not. And why is that?
Well, I think it's unfortunate, but it's quite natural also after a defeat of an election, especially when the governing party faced the election and lost the election. So obviously a lot of divisions emerge with regard to the strategy adopted, and the strategy is to be adopted. So one thing is clear, because this is the first time or second time actually, a sitting government has defeated in the presidential election. 2015 sitting government, the candidate was lost. This time sitting government's president was not the candidate, but UNP's deputy leader was put forward. And there was a huge campaign. There was a huge campaign to say that he is the winnable candidate. But within the party there were a lot of discussion and debate, and even I think in this discussion also I was asked why, why the delay? Why you are not actually giving this winning candidate a chance? Obviously, but when you look at the facts and figures, when you look at the statistics, the UNP base vote is not enough to carry in the presidential election. The UNP candidate will have to actually, would have to get the support of the people who are going to support JVP, people who are going to support TNA, and minority parties, also the general civil society.
No,
So,
are you trying to say, Sudharshana, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say that Ranil Wickremesinghe would have been a better candidate than Sajid Premadasa?
well, I think that's past. I'm not going to say that who is the better candidate, because now we have decided and we have put forward a candidate, and candidate lost. So everybody must take the responsibility. It's a collective decision. But I want to say that before the decision, there was a huge uproar to say that this is the winning candidate.
But
that-
do
that's
you
so-
agree? But do you agree, Sudharshana, if I say that Sajid Premadasa had only 2 months, while his opponent, the strong opponent, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, had nearly 2 years to campaign, and he knew he was coming into the fray? Do you think that Sajid Premadasa did not have that competitive edge because he came in as a last resort to the UNP?
Well, one could look at from that point, but I think there's no point finding excuses after you lose the election, because you have the confidence, because nobody asked him to become the candidate and he wanted to be the candidate and his backers.
But
So,
finally, what matters is the UNP is yet to get its act together.
yes, that is true, but I think slowly but surely, now there have been discussions, and I understand Mr. Premadasa also is going to start his, after the short break, he's going to start, I heard, from tomorrow, and UNP will be looking forward for the general election.
Thank you very much. Sudharshana Gunawardene, former advisor to Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. We now move our attention to the very young Kris Balthazaar, Sri Lanka Pojana Perumal Municipal Councillor, representing the Devila Mount Lavinia Municipal Council. Kris, interestingly, all eyes are now on Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president, the 7th executive president of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. The question is he pleasing the international community? What is going on right now with regard to the incident, alleged abduction case of the Swiss embassy staff? Do you think he's pulling the right strings now, or do you think this will not play that great in the eyes of the international community?
First of all, Shamil, thank you for having me on the show tonight. As for the international community, Shamir, we saw last week the Emirates, all the countries, the representatives coming forward and saying that they'll be giving their fullest support to His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And while you're speaking of that, everyone, the news, the talk of the town these days is about the Swiss embassy and the abduction. But I guess today's news, I was watching while I was on my way as well, the person who was abducted or claims to have been abducted was arrested based on false evidence. and giving false evidence to this is so Attorney General has taken action to give order to arrest the person. So it's all fabricated. You know, Shamir, from we saw the presidential election in 2015, where we saw a lot of fabricated stories, and then just a few months back, on the uprising towards the presidential election, we saw again the same stories fabricated in different manners. We saw white van abductions, we saw people coming out in media and saying, but the steps that was taken, how it was tackled was a different manner. So even the Swiss Embassy case, I guess the truth will be revealed. And the script writers behind this, I'm sure there's a couple of prominent ministers in the previous government who have been behind these stories and these allegations, and who have still not stopped, and who are trying to convince the international community still to stop, supporting the existing Sri Lankan government.
Kris, 6 times to the Criminal Investigations Department in and out, and today she was taken to the National Mental Health Hospital as well in Anguda. Is this all fair?
Tell me this, Shamil, what we saw people who were locked up on false evidence previously, and the courts took action to dismiss the cases. Now, on these grounds, we had the Swiss ambassador visit the president and, discuss about the further relations of both countries. So, by all due fairness, the courts, now we saw as to how previously the people who were involved with the legal background of the country coming out and saying as to how they were threatened or what measures were taken for them to take decisions. We saw with the case of the bombings as to how many police officers have come out now. So law and order in this country was politicized. Decisions were made inside temple trees previously, and it was not only the SLP, the UMP or anyone else, it was the entire opposite, the government and those who supported them, including the JVP. We saw the previous Deputy Solicitor General coming and mentioning who was present at the meetings. So there is a fair trial going on, being questioned and being taken into custody, or, the Sri Lankan legal system is you're innocent until proven guilty. So let the courts decide on that.
As the matter is in court, I don't want to speak about the court decision or anything related to that, Kris, but let's talk about the manner in which how this government expedited cases against such individuals. Take a look at the Swiss Embassy incident, and then let's take a look at the white van media conference that was held. You see cases being expedited, and there seems to be a fear psychosis that is being generated. We saw how a private website was raided right after the election was over. And we saw that report on Al Jazeera as well. So it brings somewhat of a disrepute to the government in play.
See, Shamir, don't forget, soon after the presidential election in 2015, we saw court complexes being open till 11, 12 midnight, and the sons of the former president being arrested. So if it went up to that magnitude, what's happening here is a fair system that's in place.
So the attitude is, they did it, why can't we do it?
No, that's not the case. If so, how many cases of corruption that should be taken up? If so, how many cases with regard to the April bombing should be arrested by now?
Right, thank you very much, Kris Balthazaar. Sri Lanka Pujana Peramana Municipal Council representing the Dehavel Mount Lavinia Municipal Council. I now open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate left is Deshan Gunawardene, and on to my far left is John Fernando. Let's start off with John.
Well, thank you, Shamir. Well, my first question is directed to you, Mr. Sudharshana. Well, at the moment, we know general election is approaching, and the leader of the United National Party is Ranil Wickremesinghe. And recently, we saw he making a statement in front of media saying that during the presidential election, during the campaign, with statistics, he knew that Sajith Premadasa will be defeated. Well, So like I mentioned before, at the moment he is the leader of the party and we are approaching a general election, and we know for a strong government or for good governance to prevail, there should be a strong opposition as well. If the masses point the finger at the UNP or at Ranil Wickremesinghe and say, with such instability inside the United National Party, all they are trying to is create the opposition that the current government wants. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, that when Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe said that he knew, we have to actually give that in the context. Soon after the defeat, he first told a couple of former ministers, former parliamentarians, that he had been actually getting the reports from the research group that originally predicted that Sajith Premadasa should be the candidate.
Okay.
So that particular group was employed by that section, but they were not continuing with them, so he said that he managed to get them to report. So based on these reports, he said that the projected vote share, based on that the statistics, is a projection, it was not increasing. In the first week of October or second week of October, UNP's voter share was predicted as 32%, whereas the opposition, the Gotabaya Rajapaksa vote share was predicted as 42. And next, after 2 weeks, the 42 went up to 44, but 32, our 32 was stuck there. So that's a point. And then last week, that 44 went to up to 45, but 32, there's a staticness in there. So that's what he said. It's not that actually he predicted or something, but he was just going by the statistics. He did not disclose that, but then he gave that information to Mr. Malik Samaravikrama. That's what he said. So then, okay, the presidential election is over. Normally in Sri Lanka, our experience is that you first go to the presidential election, you win it, and then you immediately after you dissolve the parliament and go for the election. But after 19th amendment, that is not possible.
Why isn't the UNP supporting a dissolution?
Sorry?
Why isn't the United National Party supporting a dissolution of?
That's a very good question. Actually, that we had three options soon after defeat. One is to continue the government until the August, or if president decided to dissolve by March, until March. But with that kind of mandate given, UNP thought it's not a good decision, and also a couple of ministers resigned. Even before the election results were announced, a couple of ministers like Harin Fernando, Mangala Samaravira, they resigned, even without consulting the party. So that option is not practical. Then the other option is to actually, the former Prime Minister discuss with his team whether we should now discuss with the opposition and the president-elect to agree on an early dissolution. So if we can agree on a 2/3 majority, early dissolution is possible. That actually has been discussed, and Prime Minister was of the view that we should do it. But then the other parliamentarians came out and said, no, we don't want dissolution now, we can't go for elections now. Also, we don't want to continue the government, so let's go to the opposition. Especially the people who supported Sajith Premadasa very much came forward to do that.
Mr. Gunawardene, do you think it's in the best interest immediately after the presidential election to go for a parliamentary election because it offers stability?
Well, I mean, you can...
on a national interest basis.
Yeah, national interest basis, that would be the best course of action, and then
so
we
is the United National Party hijacking national interest to sort out the internal issues?
Sorry?
Is the United National Party...
No, I mean, no, in a democracy, the party leader cannot make that decision.
No,
especially
I'm not asking the party leader.
Right.
I'm saying, is an internal issue at a party taking precedence over national interest?
No, I don't see. I can't agree with you, because that's one opinion. In a democracy, you have to discuss and agree, right? So party, there was a discussion. This option was discussed, but the majority thought, no, we should not. at this point. This is not the time for general election.
Why?
Well, for various reasons. One, they said that politically that the parliament, constitutionally, this parliament can go on until president decided to dissolve. So without 2/3, you can't do that.
Right.
So if you can't actually muster 2/3, it's not going to be possible. So it's a matter of parliament. Actually, it's not a party. So parliament. Now we could have discussed this if parliament was convened. Now what happened is the parliament is prorogued. There's no parliament. Actually, we did not hang on the power. We just discussed with the president, and we handed over the power. Prime Minister resigned. Unless Prime Minister resigned, that cabinet will not be dissolved. So the cabinet would have continued. But then we took that decision after consulting, and now now the president managed to appoint his own government. That's good. But to discuss this option, we have to open the parliament. Parliament was supposed to be open on the 3rd. What happened is the president, by gazette notification, prorogued. So this option, what you are discussing, even we couldn't discuss.
Mr. De Silva, you have a long history, a reputed history in Parliament, and I'm sure you know you spent a lot more time in Parliament than I think all of us. But I want to ask you two questions. I want to ask you the first: is the internal issue of the United National Party the reason behind a general election not being held and potentially stability being assured in terms of taking forward the national interest? And secondly, is the prorogation of the parliament that has now become the issue moving forward, or is there another reason parliament is prorogued by the president that you think?
Actually, the first question, I don't think I should really get involved with it, because there are issues in the party, and we could see all that the way things are happening, right? Unfortunately, that is not how it should be, basically, because our problem in this country, rulers and even party leaders have remained in their positions for so long. You just can't get rid of them, right? That is with regard to even the parliamentarians, basically. Now, Professor Ian Robertson had said all the problems that may crop up basically in a democracy is basically because there are politicians who have remained in power for very long, right? It should be for a very short period, basically. Now, there was a guy called Thomas Hobbes who wrote the book called Leviathan, and in that he had said all that happens because ultimately they create a country where there's no rule of law and order. That is exactly what has really happened.
Mr. De Silva, I want to come back to the question though, the prorogation. Why do you think, you've been in parliament for a long time?
Yeah, prorogation, let me straight away say, prorogation is a matter that particularly the president alone can handle. That's a constitutional power vested in the president, and I don't want to say it good or bad, but I know it's a constitutional power. Probably he may have done that because now the way things are happening right now, basically I saw even today or yesterday that he had come up with a program for the future, something like vision, mission, all that, right? Naturally, if the parliament is prorogued by the president, which implies, that indicates that the president shall have all the powers to come to parliament and announce his plan of action. That is called, say, presidential statement, which will have to be even taken up in parliament, all that, right? So probably with that intention, he may have used constitutional provisions that is vested with the president in order to, prorogue parliament, because you can't dissolve parliament at the moment.
Don't you think, Mr. De Silva, that the parliament at this instant was prorogued as a result to assist the United National Party to get its act together, name an opposition leader, and even the party leaders' dispute coming to an amicable settlement? The simple format: you scratch my back, I will scratch yours. And we've seen over the years how the how the Rajapaksa regime has been very closely connected with Ranil Wickremesinghe and the UNP during his leadership as the opposition leader. So, was it because of that the parliament was prorogued, or was it particularly the statement that you are mentioning right now, where President Rajapaksa wanted to make a special statement or announcement in parliament?
Yeah, as you very rightly said, there can be definitely some other agenda, probably just to accommodate the UNP. But in my own analysis, I personally feel we can't come to that kind of conclusions because that's not within our whatever grasp, basically. Now, it is true, as you very rightly said, there had been similar things happening in the past, because that was how, let me go back, long years ago we saw there was an opposition, right? But unfortunately, during the last couple of decades, there is no opposition. The government, they cross over, they buy them over, and members are being sold for billions and millions, all that. So there is no opposition. Probably there may have been other reasons too, but I don't know specifically. My own way of analyzing the whole thing is, let me say it this way, I personally think there may be other hidden whatever agenda, all that, but I don't think there could be any other agenda right now at this moment, particularly because the steps that are being taken by the government, probably they need time, say, to study basically how the parliament should be addressed and what needs to be told to the whole country with regard to the parliamentary elections and future elections, which is now almost at the doorstep.
Mr. Balthazaar, see, Shamir brought up a valid point. Is the prorogation, they also had an accusation in certain quarters about the audited report when it came to the bond scam. That was also said to be presented to the COPE committee the day after the prorogation. Is this another political gimmick played with long-term interest at heart?
No, Rishan, see, it's as...
what is the stance of the SLPP? Are they for a potential dissolution if the opportunity will, let's say, come January, if the UNP agreed?
What we want is an election. Mm-hmm. We want a properly established government. Mm-hmm. But see, when it comes to parliament, the president being newly appointed, there's certain standing committees in parliament. Now, these standing committees have to be changed. Certain policies, certain things have to be changed within the parliamentary complex as to how things happen. And the president needs time to set in. And as I say, the Rajasana Katha, which the president makes his first statement at parliament. So within a period of a month, to be with all due fairness, as a newly elected president, that time period should be given to him. And, that's, I guess, the main stand that we had to take. But it's not to work with the conflicts within or the crossroads that the UMP face, or nothing to do with the opposition.
Kris, to be very fair and honest, we know at the moment with the actions taken by the president so far, the response from the people is on a very positive note. We all have to agree upon that. But we know in Sri Lanka, so far, the political cycle, it's a vicious cycle where two major political factions gets elected and then re-elected, elected, re-elected. And then what we have seen during the past, once a government is appointed or once a government is elected, that government tends to clear the tracks of the government who was in power before. So if the people or the masses point out the finger at your government, the SLPP, and say that you are trying to cover up the tracks of the previous government, because we know yet issues like the bond scam needs to be addressed. How will you respond to the masses, maybe in the future?
See, it's a matter of time. It's just 1 month. And the cabinet, the gazette of the cabinet just came out recently. Secretaries were appointed recently. So all this takes time. That's why we say we need to go in for a general election as soon as we can. So it's a matter of time on how we do things. But of course, as for the government stance, the decisions that we take, those decisions we'll always stand by. Don't forget, His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa gave a clear manifesto to the people. So those decisions we will not evade on, and we have already started working on it, which I can elaborate more if you want me to. But as for the decisions, there is no internal combination, or there is nothing with the UMP or nothing to safeguard this thing. All the people
I can tell you a classic example, Kris, because you're pressing on this fact about how the Rajapaksa regime is not trying to assist the UNP. We saw several years ago when there was a protest opposite the UNP headquarters in Sirikota. Behind the Rajapaksa regime instructed the Road Development Authority to tar the road that was already tarred leading up to the Sirikota UNP headquarters. So this is why the analogy is all about. Is it an effort once again to assist the UNP?
See, there again, Shamil, isn't it prominent that the development structure of the country continued while the opposition was always at bottlenecks at each other?
I think that's another thing I wanted to add there. Basically, I think you're right there because, 2015 government was elected for a purpose. And actually, there were investigations that went on. Unfortunately, little later only we realized, there's another party, they'll say, okay, we have to, let me put it this way, they are rogues, we have to catch them. And the other party comes into power. And you don't catch them, right? You also rob, right? The other party comes back to power saying that they'll have to be caught. So this cycle goes on because they look after each other. I think in that sense you're correct.
No, but in that on that context,
Kris, the reason is you have already tarred road, and the Road Development Authority goes and tars the same road that has already been tarred. So that is development.
That road was not tarred at the time. I was there during the protest, Shamil.
No,
I was in the UMP at that time.
Yeah, but
so I was a victim of that, and I know exactly what happened there.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, now as to what
but the road was closed haphazardly at that time. You know that very well.
But it was still open to the public. The protest continued.
Yeah, but protest continued outside the UNP headquarters, not opposite the UNP headquarters. I was there at that protest as well as a journalist at that time, Kris, and the road was closed.
And was it an obstacle to the public to come there?
Of course it was. You could not have come from
for the traffic movement.
From the Atul Court entrance.
But you could have walked there and come. The protest was inside Sirikota.
Right, okay.
But just to press on one thing, Shamil.
Yeah.
What Mr. De Silva said was that the people get together and that the previous government and the new government, they work on it. But as a father, but this thing, if your son has been arrested on false allegations, and 2 of your sons were arrested and locked up on several occasions, your wife being arrested or questioned day in, day out, okay? Family members questioned continuously by different commissions, different agencies. The people who supported you, there was political action taken against them. We saw in the previous, every day it was a news of someone being arrested and someone not. So you think that anyone would want to have, like, even for a day, even for 24 hours, or even for an hour if someone is arrested, you think that anyone would like to have a relationship with that thing? It's just that what was done at that time were allegations. But what is going to come out in time is the truth.
We speak about this central bank bond controversy and how Arjuna Mahendran has to be brought before the law in Sri Lanka and has to be tried. Will the same sentiment be applied for individuals like Udayanga Veeratunga, who has been embroiled with the MIG case?
Most definitely. I don't see as to why.
What steps has the government taken on that?
I cannot comment on that as of now, because the thing, as for the bond scam, of course.
No, let's not talk about the bond scam. That's the previous government. But during the Rajapaksa regime, we saw Udayanga Veeratunga embroiled with the MIG case. And will he also be tried?
Most definitely. If
And
he
you're
comes
100%
back,
sure?
if we can arrest him, if we can get him down, we will definitely put him at trial.
No, because we saw the Singapore court has already been notified about the extradition request that was made by the Attorney General's Department and also the court, but nothing
See, is
yet
the,
on Udayanga
is the
Veeratunga.
country asking for Udayanga Veeratunga or the former central bank
Because
governor?
you say that everyone who has done wrong has to be tried.
Definitely.
So Udayanga Veeratunga also is one of them.
He will be put forward. He will be brought into justice.
Sudharshana, talking about the way forward for the UNP. The UNP, it's high time, isn't it, to appoint a leader to the United National Party? And why is Ranil Wickremesinghe still hanging on to that position?
Well, I think that's a wrong way to put it.
What is the right
Because
way to put it?
now every party is governed by its own constitution. Like the country governs by our own constitution. Now, the parliament cannot be dissolved because the constitution says that parliament, unless the two-thirds majority is voted for a resolution to dissolve parliament, requesting president to dissolve the parliament, parliament can be dissolved. Cannot be dissolved. Likewise, the UNP, like any other party, has a constitution. And constitution provides for the appointment of the leader and also leader's powers and functions. So at the moment, the leader has been appointed, I believe in 2019, January, he has been re-elected. So once elected, the leader holds position for 6 years. And this decision was put forward to the party convention held just before the presidential election. That same convention that adopted Sajith Premadasa's candidacy adopted the resolution by the working committee that Ranil Wickremesinghe is appointed as a leader. So he holds the position. And according to UNP constitution, unless he resigns by himself, there is no provision to remove him. That's the constitution.
And it seems
That's no provision to remove
that, yeah, constitutionally it's right, but it is very evident that since 1994, the UNP has lost a lot of elections under the leadership of Ranil Wickremesinghe, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But it's extraordinary circumstances. Under extraordinary circumstances, you have to understand that UNP, the party suffered most due to terrorism. UNP's top leaders were assassinated by LTT. So UNP suffered so much. So only remaining leader was Ranil Wickremesinghe. So he was elected leader. Then he continued because there was nobody else. And many occasions, many people left the party. And he was the man who held the fort. And then he had to contest elections in 1999 and also 2005. Both these times that elections were not free and fair, and there was a terrorism problem, and there was a situation where in 1999 the bomb blast.
So, very quickly, so you're saying that Ranil Wickremesinghe was not appointed leader because of his capability shown as a leader, but by default.
Well, if you say so.
Right.
In the beginning, by default, but then he proved that he is the leader because otherwise no other leader sustained 24
I want to ask another
years.
question as to how he has proved himself, but we have to go for a short commercial break, Sudharshana. When we come back, we'll speak more about the current state of affairs in Sri Lanka. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.
time has brought your heart to me. I have loved you for 1,000 years.
Cover hits සතියේ සෑම දිනකම උදෑසන 5:30ට.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Let's start off the third round with Lacille de Silva, senior public servant. Ms. de Silva, during your opening statement, you said that you see the depth of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to lead the country. Didn't you see this depth prior to him being appointed as a president?
Actually, I told, I just mentioned that also because I did not want to isolate him and consider him as one individual who will definitely be able to get out, isolate him from the rest of the group. Basically, I identified him, I must say very frankly, as one from the whole lot, basically. So naturally, after he was elected to the post of president, I was able to see certain decisions, I would say very good. And personally, in my own analysis, I have been looking at the whole thing because I felt in this country we have never had a good administrator, starting from even George Orwell period. Now, during the last few weeks, it was obvious that in terms of the constitution, he is the head of the cabinet, he is the head of the state, head of the government, head of the armed forces, all that, right? In my view, it is something like a CEO, and he should be able to take decisions, say strong, very good decisions considering the future of the country. And I felt most of the decisions that he had taken so far, except for one or two, I don't, say every single decision was right, but there were about few decisions which I did not agree. But fortunately, you can always say, 80-20 ratio is always accepted in management terms. Basically, now looking at the big picture, I also said I was able to gauge, understand the depth because I have lived with the parliamentarians for about 30 odd years, I expected the same thing from, I told you, even from Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. But I felt he did not deliver. I must tell you very frankly, that was my frank opinion. After having ended the war, look at other countries. Think of countries like Korea, how President Park had done so much to lift that country. They call it, flying geese model, They lifted the whole country. And in 1980, they had borrowed $25 billion. Now today, we have borrowed $72 billion. Where are we? With $25 billion, they had established the whole thing in the country, industrialized the whole thing, and they were growing at a pace, in the sense growth rate was 8%. And after 80s, then they were able to even achieve 12%. Now, after ending a war, look at other countries, oldest democracy in America in 1776, right? They established a democracy, and we are also one of the oldest democracies. But our problem is our rulers did not take accountability for their faults. Right. Unfortunately, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa seems to be doing all that without moving out, and he's there seated in his desk the way I see all that, and I like it.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Silva, senior public servant. You, of course, have changed your opinion quite fast. Lightning speed.
Everybody says that it is not good, right. But in my own opinion, I don't expect anything. Yeah. But I love this country and I want certain decisions taken.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Silva. I need to quickly move to Sudharshana Gunawardene, former advisor to Ranil Wickremesinghe. Sudharshana, interestingly, on this very show, many have come and voiced opinions with regard to the United National Party. And if I recollect right, there was an individual who was a staunch supporter of the UNP who came here on the show and said that Ranil Wickremesinghe bears the hallmarks of J.R. Jayawardene. Why J.R. Jayawardene? When there was a problem, he appoints committees after committees to prolong the decisions that are being taken. And Ranil Wickremesinghe is also doing the same thing. Even now we see a committee being appointed to restructure the UNP. And in my lifetime as a journalist, I think most of the committees would have been appointed by the United National Party to resolve its internal crisis. Do you agree?
Well, is there any meaningful way you can suggest apart from appointing committees?
I can suggest one simple methodology. We are following somewhat the Brits. Gordon Brown stepped down as the Prime Minister of London when he lost the elections, and he went out as the head of his party. David Cameron, after losing Brexit, stepped down as the Prime Minister and also left the party, Conservative Party. I can give you ample evidence.
So in that case, I think
of,
Mr. Sajith Premadasa, who contested the presidential election, actually stepped down from the deputy leader position because he considered that he lost the election.
And he did.
He did. And
so what is wrong in that?
No, so that's like, so that he has done that. But so now the question is that
2005 Ranil Wickremesinghe also lost.
No, Ranil Wickremesinghe did not lose the election. It was Sajith Premadasa who lost the election. And Sajith Premadasa sent the
2005.
Sorry?
2005.
2005, yeah.
Who lost the elections?
Well, that candidate was Ranil Wickremesinghe. But this case is different, no? Ranil Wickremesinghe, as I mean, you said that was it default. Now I must come back.
No, you asked me a question, and
you answered the question.
Yeah.
Your question was that you asked that whether it's appointing committees, right? So my point is that to resolve problems, that you have to appoint committees and deliberate. And a party leader cannot resign because someone asked them to resign. So party has a system. And Ranil Wickremesinghe was lost. It's not because it's not only his problem. There were other factors come into play. So you thought, okay, he would have resigned. He didn't resign. That's fine. So now the question is, at this particular presidential election, it was Sajith Premadasa who lost. So now the question is that some people say that he should be made the leader. So what's the logic? Then he lost, the same logic should apply to him. See, therefore, this kind of logic will not lead us to anywhere because that, some questions are loaded. Because you take a position here, I take a position here. I think this is not the way to handle. Here, UNP as a party, after this election defeat, is actually discussing, first they have to safeguard the party membership. They have to protect them. And they have to actually lift the morale up. And also they have to face the parliament election.
With such a sentiment, Sudharshana, you are very confident that the UNP will solve its problems. With such a sentiment, do you think the UNP will be able to gain a majority at the next election?
Well, elections are at least 5 months away. So within 5 months, many things can happen because government might lose its popularity because already now 1 month has passed. There were a lot of talk, but nothing much has changed. For example, now there's a discussion about this reduction of VAT. But when you go to the market, when you go there, you can't find that reduction. You don't find this reduction of the commodity prices. The prices are actually skyrocketing. So one can say, okay, they have taken steps. So within 4 and 5 months, many things can change. So if the UNP can bring its act together with the other opposition parties, has a fair chance to get a majority.
I will have to agree with you on that, Sudharshana, because when in 2015, when the good government was appointed, within 1.5 months, the central bank bond controversy took place. So if, God forbid, if something like that happens with the current government, they probably will be out of a job as well. But the UNP is responsible for the state of affairs right now in Sri Lanka, unfortunately. I now move my attention to Kris. Kris, I'll pose a question to you and then you can elaborate your thoughts later on. So Sudharshana said that a lot can happen in a span of 5 months. And looking at the last 1 month alone, you can't see anything substantial that has happened. Can you elaborate?
Substantial, as in?
He said about the VAT, as an example. He said, though the VAT has been reduced, the cost of goods in the market has not reduced by that percentage.
That's okay. So, see, as a government, tell me one government in any country that has built up its nation based on taxes, that has developed as a nation based on taxes. There's no government that has done that. So what was 15% on VAT was brought down to 8%. See, the direct taxation and the indirect taxation, both the tax policies were changed in a very short period of time. And these came with the manifest of His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So also the pay tax was reduced, the income tax levels were, pay tax was exempted. The industries, you take the construction industry, a tax of what was 28% at the time, came down to 14%. So if you're buying an apartment, say at 10 million rupees at the time, you would pay another 2.8 million to it, whereas now you pay, 1.4 million. So, the prices. Then the overall structure of the goods, you can't have an immediate response on what you want, but just give it a few days and you'll see a big price difference. And also, Shamir, we are talking about the UMP and their policy decisions and the leadership issues. But them as a whole have been an absolute failure. You saw during the previous Rajapaksa regime, there was one thing that the UMP harped on. That was the fuel hedging deal. Now, the loss that the country made at that time was 12 billion rupees. Then the Greek bond issue, which was about 900 million that the country faced. So basically 12.8 billion rupees as a loss within that period of time. But within this 5 years of this government coming in, through just, I'll start off, the Hyatt hotel deal. They start off with the Hyatt hotel deal, 1.2. I'm not going to talk about the bond scam, but the Hyatt hotel, 1.2 billion rupees losses. Then the previous government wanted to expand the airline, Sri Lankan Airlines, give the people a better service, and also we were the first to order the A350s in the region. And by cancelling the order, the company suffered a 17 billion rupee loss. Over that, they basically went on a very vindictive run to sabotage the Rajapaksas. They said that the port city won't happen and compensated the Chinese contractor with 20 billion rupees. Over and above that, so this is all in billions. I've still not brought in the bond scam issue in here. Over and above that, the overall, with the rupee depreciating within the last 4 years, the country has faced a loss of more than 1,500 billion rupees. So collectively, you take this 1,500 billion rupees. Now, we saw the previous government saying that the Hambantota port was a useless port, that there was a rock in the middle of the port. But we could have built 10 Hambantota ports just on the rupee devaluation, the depreciation of the rupee. We could have built 10 Hambantota ports. We could have built 12 Norachole power plants. So with the rupee depreciation and also the bad management, the poor decisions that they took, it's not about the leader. It's about the entire party, their policies and the structure as to how they manage this country. That's where the problem is, and that's where the people defeated them.
We saw, Sudharshana, I'm quite sure that the efforts taken by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to reduce the VAT this time around was taken with a good intention. However, during his brother's time, President Mahinda Rajapaksa's time, we saw taxes being reduced on luxury cars ahead of the night races that was taking place in Sri Lanka. You said that the Greek bonds, the loss stood at 900 million. Sri Lankan rupees, approximately around 1.1 billion Sri Lankan rupees. And also you spoke about the hedging deal, which stood not at 12 billion, but 14 billion, a cumulative of 15.1 billion as a result of the losses. That was
as opposed to 20 billion.
You
on
said the numbers wrong.
Yeah, okay.
So for the benefit of our viewers, I think I have a responsibility to enlighten them on the correct numbers. So it may be the right choice this time to reduce taxes, and it may be the right time to do so ahead of an election. But where is the government going to find the revenue?
It's not ahead of an election, Samir. It's what's based on a manifest. Now, you saw the previous government.
So the manifesto all says that free fertilizer should be given. Why wasn't that implemented?
Those will be gradually implemented, Samir. It's not everything that can be done overnight. This whole
Chris, you're
thing.
interesting. You speak like a politician. When I ask you about Udayana Virutham, you say that will happen with time. And then when I say about the fertilizer, you say that will happen also with time. So when is that time?
It's only a month, Samir. It's only a month.
But it was very quick to implement certain...
Yeah, but you take it like this. You take a government that comes in and then starts taxing a common cause. Like you take a temple. Pinpettiyatat badu gahuwa. If you are donating the clergy with anything, even that was taxable, 14% tax.
How that tax came about?
That's what your finance ministry took.
No, it's not finance ministry. It's you have to just
according to the act. According to the act, Section 64 and Section 17. So this was the Inland Revenue Act that came in 2017, Shamir, was not made for Sri Lanka. It was made for Ghana. And then they took the advice from a very poor couple of advisors and went on a taxing spree, which the country, if the poor man is taxed and the rich, where does the poor man have the money to spend? How can you grow an economy just purely based on taxation? So it's not only the poor governance or the government or the decisions and the people around them, but it's the policies they made at the time that was absolute failure, and that that pulled the pockets of the people.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I open the floor for questions from our journalists, but before that, just a small advice to the three gentlemen who are sitting on the panel today. We would appreciate answers to be given rather than giving us answers which are in the air. Example, in journalism you say only time will tell. When will that time be? I think with having three panelists today on the show, I think it's very important to give our viewers, our learned viewers, an opportunity to understand what the time frames are so they get a hint of what's coming up in the next couple of months. Just an advice to the three panelists today on the show. Let me open the floor. So let's start off again with John.
Thank you, Shamir. My question once again is directed to Mr. Kris. A topic that was discussed even before the presidential election, a topic that is already being discussed even at the present, is the Millennium Challenge Corporation or the MCC agreement. Now, we saw State Minister Vasudevan Anayakara saying that this specific MCC agreement is an economic invasion and then an influence on political power, and then finally the military force will follow. So clearly, it's clear that this certain MCC agreement is a challenge or will negatively affect the country's sovereignty. So then why is the government still toying with the agreement? Why isn't the government making a clear statement before the MCC community and before the general public that the MCC will not be signed? Because it's clearly, even your party, the government clearly mentioned that this is a challenge to the country's sovereignty.
See, what you're talking about, I saw recently on a certain media channel where Honorable Udaya Gammampila made a statement, but the statement was not, the full statement was not shown, where he says about 70% of that will be for transport and then 30%. But as a overall, what we spoke during the previous time, during the presidential elections, and when this MCC thing came, we saw there was certain claims that were said about Mangala Samaraweera by the backbenchers of the UMP, saying that the MCC agreement was not clearly given at the time, and they had to defend it based on that. We took a stance and we said, no, we are not going to sign this. You take into consideration this. The MCC will bring us $400 million.
Yeah.
And we pay that back in a period of 30 years' time, or whatever we get is for a period of 30 years' time.
So there's no paying back.
Yeah,
MCC agreement, it's a
there's
grant.
no-
There's
the
no paying
grant
back.
that comes
There's no
there.
paying back.
Okay, but then
It's absolutely a grant.
It's a grant.
Okay, so the grant coming in, is it necessary to have a foreign nation come in that can tarnish the sovereignty of a country like ours, which is an island nation,
Exactly.
which also has, everyone comes in with a motive.
Definitely, there's
Now
no
we saw
such
we
thing
saw
as a
we
failure.
saw how Hambantota port was with such objection by the opposition sold over. We saw how dealings happen with other foreign nations about Trincomalee. We saw certain stories going about Colombo.
Did the
We
Hambantota
saw-
port, was the Hambantota port, I know it was a loan, but still, isn't it?
It is a 99-year lease.
It was, but what I'm trying to tell you is, still, when the Chinese party gave the loan for the Hambantota port to be built, that was also done with intentions
See,
that are not
Deshant,
necessarily in our best interest.
if I borrow, the country borrowed all these. See, whatever development that was made by the Rajapakshas at the time was shown as a loss and given for peanuts. So you take the Hambantota port, it was self-generating. There's money, it was making its own money. The people's tax money did not have to go to pay the Hambantota, the loan, the loan that was taken for it.
So you are referring
So
to Hambantota port.
Ports Authority alone generated enough money, and by now, every year on year, without if they not condemned it and gone on a spree, year on year, Hambantota would have grown larger, which on statistics, if you take, has grown to a larger this thing. Now,
Kris,
as
I
for
want
the
to interrupt you for a second here. I want to give an opportunity to Sudharshana also
Yeah.
to intervene and speak on what you said, or else I won't be giving him an opportunity as well. So yeah, Kris, Sudharshana, you can.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was like confused. One is that MCC, so is your position is you are not going to sign. Is it clear?
that's where we
So you are not
stand.
going to sign, right? So MCC, that is clear. But despite the fact that some other politicians say different things. So then we can say, Poduyana Peramuna government will not sign MCC deal. And then Hambantota, again, you were saying that Hambantota port, that your government borrowed from China for an unproductive entity that was built, and then we had to pay back.
If it
And in 2013, when your government was in power, Minister Sarath Amanugama, then Minister of that government actually clearly said that we have to transfer this loss-making entity into the equities. So that was very much publicized. The island reported that. I don't have that paper now. So even your government was contemplating, because you can't actually build something and it's such a loss-making. So Hambantota port was completely a white elephant. And what our government did was try to negotiate with them and came to a partnership. Now again, before the election, you said you will renegotiate that. So I just wanted to ask whether are you going to renegotiate Hambantota port deal with the government?
No,
Third
sir,
question is that
Will you be able to?
Okay, yeah, will you renegotiate? Third one is that you said that okay, no country can should interfere the country's sovereignty. So in that case, the President Rajapaksa recently went to India soon after he assumed the presidency, and the Indian government also promised a loan facility of 450 million. So again, will you also, because in that same argument, India cannot also be allowed to interfere.
So
Are you going to stop
so
that?
3 questions was asked.
Yeah.
One was on the MCC agreement. The second was on the renegotiating of the Hambantota report, and the third question about getting some money from India as well. So
getting some money from India.
you have 3 questions to answer.
Yeah.
You can either go on chronological order or whatever you.
So now I'll start with the last question. So the Indian agreement, the Indian loan that was coming was Prime Minister Modi openly invited His Excellency Rajapaksa to come and visit them, and in return, he gave them a loan of $400 million. Okay, but the MCC agreement, Shamil,
So you are taking that loan.
that's been accepted.
Will that be debated in the parliament? Because that was the time. Because MCC, you said that it has not been debated in the parliament. But you can take loan from India without discussing.
How
So
does
what's the plan?
MCC come about? It
Why
comes-
we don't know the
See,
conditions, nothing.
The technicality of the UMP and the previous government was, it comes to the back door. You saw with the Hambantota Harbour, just before signing was when we harped and we got into parliament. There was people who opposed it were arrested.
No,
on the day of the 6th.
Will you bring the Indian agreement to the parliament and discuss and debate, or just borrow it from India?
Everything has to come through parliament. Nothing can come without going through parliament. The people were informed. Parliament will be informed. Parliament is prorogued now at the moment. I'm sure it will happen. You know, it's the MCC decision overall it's a total different aspect. You're talking 70% coming towards lands, 30% coming for transport.
No, that's also wrong. I'm sorry to say, it's 70% is for the transport.
Kris, did you receive a copy of the MCC agreement?
I read through it.
Are you clear and thorough through the conditions and terms and conditions that you should?
I won't say I'm 100% thorough on it.
Okay,
I can't.
So your party or the government did express your opinion, saying that it will challenge the sovereignty of the nation.
Yes.
So that means we should not sign it. Are you trying to remove certain conditions? Are you trying to renegotiate? So what's exactly happening?
No, so what we heard Honorable Vasudeva Nanayakkara saying that we won't sign it. Then we saw Honorable Udaya Mampila saying that, you know, this is the good and this is the bad, and not everything that America brings is bad. Not everything that comes is going to be bad for us, but then there are issues that pertain national security, that will have problems with our land, that will have, you know, the matters that come within it. There are issues.
Mr. De Silva, you know, you're listening to this, this argument, go back and forth. Doesn't it make you think that with the handling of the MCC agreement by the new government, it's a bit of a deja vu situation, because this is essentially the same mess that the previous government got into because they didn't have a proper communication with regard to the stance?
I would look at it this way now. I know the present president has a responsibility that he should not, unfortunately, create a difficult situation, because MCC is definitely going to be a big problem here in this country.
Why?
If that is for various reasons. Now,
like
we saw the aircraft being, you know.
So what stipulations in the MCC alarm you as a vocal
now,
citizen?
there are three things with regard to the land, you know, stretch coming from Trincomalee to Colombo, and that's going to be a big problem because
Can I please interrupt, if you don't mind?
Please.
There's no stretch of land in the MCC agreement. If you read through, I think I hope you must have gone through. There's no such a stretch. That's actually concocted during the election time.
Provision where they had identified some amount of lands, you know, so that it will be definitely under US system.
No, there's nothing like that. In the agreement, there's nothing in that. Actually, I have gone through the agreement. There's nothing like that. That's a propaganda.
If that is not,
it's not there.
So I think still we have to go into it carefully, because there is a threat. Now, there is an act in Parliament, the bill in Parliament, which was suspended because it was suspended for good reasons. Ranil Wickremesinghe did not want to follow the correct procedure to submit all that to the relevant provincial councils, right? So we went to courts.
You mean the MCC or?
Yeah, that is the relevant, that is connected to the MCC. That is connected to the MCC with regard to all those lands, you know. So eventually that was suspended because the court ruled that the matter should not be proceeded with without the permission of the provincial council. So that is the stand. Unfortunately, which has not come to the surface, basically, right? So based on all that, there is a severe threat. On top of that,
let's leave aside this economic stretch. What else? What are the other things that?
There is a danger. We saw, you know, this is going to be actually Sri Lanka is a crucial in so many ways. It has become, a hotbed basically for various reasons, right? China is interested, US is interested, India is interested, right? So we will naturally have to see that we don't come under any one of them. We saw planes bringing in their cargo and changing all that to American vessels. All that will happen freely in the future if this is granted. And actually, it was Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa who signed it long time ago. So naturally, it will have to be his responsibility, who will definitely not do it in such a way so that
Silva,
it will.
I want to take you back. I want to take you back just a bit. A little more than a month ago, you were actively on the side of one of the presidential candidates, Mr. Mahesh Senayaka.
Correct.
Mahesh Senayaka.
Yeah.
At that time,
Yes.
this was a big issue.
Yes.
And for whatever the reason, it remains a big issue. There's not enough clarity with regard to the stance of the government. But let's say the NPM. What was the NPM stance on the MCC? And what particular issue in the MCC forced the NPM to take that stance?
No, we will not support even at this stage because we don't want this country to be dominated by any one of those superpowers, right? Actually, we don't want US to come and take over all that. They will have free access. They will have so much of authority.
Free access to what? I'm sorry to ask. I mean,
Now see, during the last, if I remember right, in December, there was a plane that landed in Trinco, and all that.
so MCC has not signed. If
But
MCC,
undercover, all that happened. Now, if that was really not with authority, what do you think what will happen if there is authority and if there's an agreement with America, right? So naturally,
so you mean that we shouldn't have any agreement with USA?
No, if there is an agreement, you can have bilateral agreements. You get all types of bilateral agreements with a number of other countries, but MCC particularly.
Not with US.
No. Even US
Yeah, but
is okay.
to be very fair,
Sorry.
Kris, no, Mr. Silva is inclining to say that no agreement should be signed with the US. They are not trying to say that.
No, I'm not trying to say that, right?
They are trying to put words into their mouths, which is not fair.
Then Shamir, siding up to the US or siding up to the West, hasn't it caused a big economic turmoil in this country as well? Your organization is part of the tea trade. Look at how, because of sanctions in Iran, how much it has come into impact to the country.
But then,
Think on the long run.
But Kris, I want to mention that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
No,
President
give me a second. I want to listen to what Mr. Silva says, and then I'll get back to you. Yes, you don't know why.
Actually, it is not a good thing to permit US to come here and do all those activities with the authority, in the sense having signed the agreement, right? It should not be done. And there are all types of organizations, like what I said with regard to this bill regarding lands. We went to courts. You asked whether what did we do, right? We went to courts, and that was how we got the bill suspended, not to proceed with, to go ahead with the land issue, right? So naturally, we have done a little bit what we could have done. Unfortunate situation is we don't want to support any agreement with US where military will have a say here in this country.
Mr. De Silva, the MCC has been signed with a number of countries already so far. Have you?
But in most of the countries,
is this fear built on any country
they are in very difficult. They are facing difficult situations. They are in precarious. They have various problems.
Like,
say, especially with regard to security, right? Ours is a very crucial issue because this is a hotbed.
Yeah.
With Trincomalee Natural Harbour, they are eyeing all that to acquire Trincomalee. I don't think, because if we can remain independent, right, we should be able to, I think of our own progress.
That's a very good point, Mr. Balthazaar. I want to bring you back to something you mentioned. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa speaking to the Indian media in his very first interview. He was asked about Chinese dominance and the potential geopolitical crises that will occur if you have too many power players in a country like ours. And what did he say? He said, I'm not going to close the door to anybody. I invite the West also to come and invest. And Mr. De Silva just mentioned about how you can potentially grow yourself. But the thing is, it's 2019. We're in a globalized economy. Yes, politics is a bit more polarizing, but everything is so much more connected. Do you realistically see there being a possibility for Sri Lanka to get number one out of the rut we are in, and to go towards prosperity, if we are not going to open ourselves out to the rest of the world? What's the cutoff line to say this is a good deal and this is not?
Listen, we don't have closed doors on anyone. Our international ties have always remained the same. But don't forget that there were certain areas with the previous government where they tarnished a few relations, like with China.
And the time before that, we were more dependent on China, and relations with the West were strained.
So it's you can't now. What if what His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa did was, he'd not say, okay, fine, you all were with the West, you all got more support from them. I'm going back to China. We are going to get something from there. No, our doors are open to everyone. Okay, now you take, okay, why are we against the MCC? But then why do we open our doors? If the US are coming in clean hands, open hands, welcoming, very warmly giving us, why do we accept US aid? Now US aid is functioning very much in Sri Lanka. There are so many people who are benefiting from it. We take it with a very open heart. There's so many other programs that we accept. But if there is a threat to national security, and it's been spoken by experts who have been through this, read through it. We saw a president's counselor advising the people on social media and on news about this. We saw so many people come up with it. So that itself leaves a scare. And the special thing...
Kris, a president's counselor who's independent, who's criticizing it, or who's supporting the...
No, he explained the situation. You saw so many legals, so many doctors, so many professors, so many people explain the dangers of this.
If you say the
GMO
President's Council who is supporting the candidature of Gotabaya Rajapaksa prior to the campaign, speaking about the MCC, then that is a very biased statement.
But when
if someone independent who's speaking about it, then we can take into account.
Mr. Balthazaar, I want to ask you one last question. I want to ask you, with regard to the MCC, since we're on topic, Shamir, the economic corridor that Mr. De Silva mentioned, over the campaign trail, I know for a fact that especially the younger members from both sides, they took the stance of their parties with regard to this issue. What is the problem that the SLPP pre-2019 presidential election saw with the MCC agreement? What is the number one issue? I mean, I'm not asking just about when you say national security. There was a big talk about an economic corridor. Was that true, or was that propaganda for an election?
Which was shown on media at that time, it was shown, I think, 120,000 hectares or 40,000 hectares. I'm not sure of the land accident, okay? That was going to be signed off for more or less like a trade, like a zone.
Are you taking responsibility for what you are saying? Or
that's what I said. I'm not sure of the land extent. This is all that was on media.
I say...
This is all that went on media.
I say with responsibility, there is no such land deal.
Okay.
I say with responsibility.
Okay, so since he was...
Kris, you can't mention anything on hearsay.
Yeah.
You come on a...
No, so what I'm saying is what went on media.
Yeah.
You take black, you refer to that, that's what it comes on.
That's the problem in this country.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that anyhow, if it is said to be a threat to the national security, if it is said to be a problem for the overall structure of the country, and it has been advised by the best of advisors to us that it is not suitable. I'm not saying it's not good for the country, I'm not saying it's bad for the country, it might not be suitable. Then I think as people and as followers to leaders, we should take that stance.
Mr. Gunawardene, I have one last question for you. I want to know, the MCC agreement continues to create a lot of controversy. It continues to play on the minds of the people. You know, even right now, to be honest with you, Kris, I don't see the government necessarily communicating it as well as they should with regard to their stance. But anyway, Mr. Gunawardene, this mess to a great degree affected the presidential election campaign. Rata Vikunana was a statement that I think was heard across many villages in this country. You know, back then, the United National Party had a communication issue. You know, right now there is no clarity coming from within the United National Party with regard to the future of the party, much less a country. How do you think, how much do you think that it's important that the United National Party-led alliance as well sits down and comes up with a mechanism through which their communication or their stances or what they stand for can be made more clearly apparent?
Communication was a problem. It has been throughout and it is now. So that it has to be addressed. The problem is actually it's not about the party, not only about the party, but even the government. The government was speaking from many voices. The president spoke on one voice and the prime minister spoke on other voice. And other members, because there was no clarity. Because it was a national government, therefore these two sides of this government actually was on different positions. Then one side is now backing this SLPP. Because during the presidential election, the SLPP decided to back the SLPP candidate. So now UNP will have to think as a party how to move forward and how to communicate. So that would be easier because there's no coalition partner. That problem is now with the SLPP. They'll have to deal with, and I can now see that they have already started this because the confusion has already started. Because what they have been preaching during the election time, now they are now coming back to haunt them because of this land deal, land this corridor and all these things. Now they'll have to explain. It's not our problem now. Because it's a 480 million grant is coming, and you exploited that to use it as a political thing, and then there were various so-called professionals and academics came forward. So now you'll have to deal with that. So if you don't want that, that's up to you, your government. But problem is that that same argument will come for any other loan, any other grant, because now Indian loan is coming, so Indian loan will have to discuss. You can't simply take Indian loan, so Indian loan will have to also come to Parliament, because I hope that same professionals, same doctors and everybody will come forward and say. Because otherwise the parameter would be like when the SLPP or when the President Rajapaksa says something good, it's good. When they say something bad, it's bad. I think that should not be the parameter.
I don't mean to listen, but just one small thing.
Yeah.
Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa going to India, coming back, it was open, slap bang mentioned. Okay?
What are the conditions?
But what I'm asking is, why did the backbenchers of the UMP say that the MCC was brought through the wrong channel and that Mangala Samarira did not mention the conditions about the MCC and did not mention the facts about the MCC to the backbenchers of the United National Party? Is it because Mangala Samarira and the group did not care about the backbenchers, or was there something hidden within it that could not be told to them and they were just asked to sit as backbenchers and keep their mouth shut?
No, to be fair, I admit there was a communication problem. That's what I wanted to answer. But again, now backbenchers, after the election coming out and saying it's because of Mangala Samarira brought the MCC, we got defeated, that's the wrong thing. Because as backbencher or frontbencher, you are a parliamentarian, you have been given privileges, a library. You should have actually studied, and within the party you should have discussed. There's no point actually pointing fingers. But I maintain that MCC was a good agreement. It was beneficial to the country. It would have done it, but there was a communication issue, and finally...
Thank you very much.
And finally, Shamir, during the presidential election, we saw Sajith Premadasa, presidential candidate, come out and say, Rata Bedana, Rata Vikunana, Kisima Giusumagada, Mama Atsanka Abanne.
Yes.
Right. So very quickly, Sudharshana, I need to give an opportunity to Mr. De Silva also to voice his opinion with regard to the points that you mentioned, because we won't be talking about MCC in the final round. Very quickly.
When you say MCC, in my opinion, right, it was what is called military logistic hub.
No.
they were going to set up. Yes.
That's
the
what
American embassy had specifically said, right?
It's not MCC. I'm sorry, it's not MCC. MCC is Millennium Challenge Corporation.
Yeah, but eventually
No.
will end up with all that, you know, they will operate. Now let me read that, because I just got an article. When the United States uses Sri Lanka as a logistic hub, or in the words of American embassy, military logistic hub, the whole operation between the two nations may not involve military hardware or equipment, but supportive measures that facilitate the United States military operations in Asia Pacific region at a time the rivalry between the US and China is on the increase, which is
You're
critical.
referring to AXA, I think,
No,
Mr. Silva.
Yeah, MCC, I can categorically say that there's nothing like that. No position, that's why.
no, that is where they bring in the
There were two agreements that were supposed to be
Yeah.
signed. One was the AXA,
AXA
one
and
was
MCC.
No, one was
has already been
AXA,
signed.
one was SOFA. AXA already signed during 2007 when Minister Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the Defence Secretary. That was signed.
And that was renewed again by
Renewed
this
again
government
by
as well.
the former government.
Yeah, former
SOFA,
led
first
by Ranil Wickremesinghe.
led by Maithripala Sirisena and Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Right. We're going for a short commercial break. We'll come back and discuss on the final round on the way forward for Sri Lanka. All this and more after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation.
ටොප් හිට්ස් සතියේ සෑම දිනකම දහවල් 12:45ට
තරු දිලේ අම්බරේ මේ සීතල දෙසැම්බරේ
රටම සරසන සිරස නත්තල් කලාපය 2019
ශ්‍රී ලංකා යුද්ධ හමුදාවේ ඉංජිනේරු බලකායේ නිර්මාණශීලීත්වයෙන් ඉදිකෙරෙන ජේසුස් ක්‍රිස්තුස් වහන්සේ ඉපැදුණු බෙත්ලෙහෙම් නුවර සර්ව සම ආකෘතිය දැකගන්න.
ශුද්ධෝත්තම ෆ්‍රැන්සිස් පාප්තුමන් විසින් ආසිරි ගන්වන ලද දේව මාතා ප්‍රතිමාවෙන් ආශිර්වාද ලබා ගන්න.
යුද හමුදා, ගුවන් හමුදා සහ නාවික හමුදා කැරල්ගේ සංදර්ශන.
පාසල් සහ දේවස්ථාන සහභාගී වන නත්තල්ගේ ප්‍රසංග.
දරුවන් වෙනුවෙන් සතුට විනෝදය සමග තෑගි බෝග පිරුණු ළමා විනෝද පාරාදීසය.
මෙදා නත්තලේ පවුල් පිටින් පැමිණ ඔබේ ජීවිත ආලෝකවත් කරගන්න. සිරස නත්තල් කලාපය 2019.
දෙසැම්බර් 20, 21 සහ 22 දිනවල සීමා සහිත කැපිටල් මහරාජා සංවිධාන මූලස්ථාන පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We start off the final round with Lacille De Silva, senior public servant. Mr. De Silva, you seem to be an optimist today on the show. You were a pessimist a few months ago. You see a glimmer of hope for Sri Lanka. You see a silver lining, don't you? And if so, where are we heading now?
Yeah, good question. Like what I told you, over a period of time, for the last several decades, we have not been able to see anything positive, even having ended the war. I have said this always, right? And on this occasion, there is very clear signals where we find the executive president taking good decisions. I must say I'm not trying to whitewash anybody, because in this country as a citizen, I like to see something which is happening basically where rule of law, eventually the president takes everything under his control and executes all that so that the state will become fully operational. Right? Unfortunate situation, even in parliament for a long period of time. The president interfered, and you know what happened, right? During the last few years, right? There was a period like what we discussed here about corruption, right? They don't want to talk about corruption because everybody is corrupt. But looking at the big picture here, if you take one by one, at this moment I could see, but I'm still with an open mind to see what the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is going to do in regard to various issues, because he has not, now his brother's period, we saw the biggest cabinet in the whole world, right? And we saw money was being wasted for roads, highways and all that. Oxford Union had carried out a survey. We had, when you could do that, 1 kilometer with $7 million US, we have spent 27 million. That has been the pattern. We know Matale Airport, 396 billion wasted, really, right? Think of the port, 9 billion when it comes to that rock operation. Just a few, right? But I saw Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, I'm still watching him, right? He had given specific instructions with regard to certain things. I'm not a supporter of his, but in the interest of the country, I like to see some sense or some order being introduced, so that one by one, with regard to these other appointments of the personal staff of cabinet ministers, and with regard to the secretaries being how they should be appointed and all that, those are good indications. Those were the things we have been fighting for a long period of time. There are a few more other things that needs to be done. Once you do that, after the parliamentary elections, if he is going to take all those corrective measures, I personally feel we'll be on the right track.
Right, thank you very much.
Please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. De Silva, senior public servant. I now move my attention to Sudharshana Gunawardene, former advisor to the Prime Minister. Mr. Gunawardene, what should happen to the United National Party now? Very crucial time. Few months from a general election, you said 5 months during your statement. You said we're just 5 months away from an election. What must the UNP do now?
First of all, I'm surprised that I'm only getting the questions relating to the UNP, and other two gentlemen are getting questions.
I can ask you about
interest.
the Swiss embassy case, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that I cannot discuss. It's a subjudice because.
But I'm asking you something about the UNP because you were the former Prime Minister.
Yeah, you're asking me only about UNP, even though I like to discuss many other national issues. Yeah. I'll tell you briefly. The UNP actually should be in transition now. So the leader has also expressed that it's time for transition. He has asked the party seniors to come up with some kind of a proposal about transition. On one hand, that we have seen the parties, the vote base, when it comes to the Sinhala Buddhist vote base, has been eroded. So the confidence need to be re-established in that area, because while we are getting support from the minorities, but our support base is eroded, because that's where the SLPP has exploited. Two, that the leadership need to be thinking, so there need to be a forward thinking about leadership. So there's a negotiation about forming a leadership council, where the speaker, Mr. Karujaya Surya, can also come and play a part in the transition, and the other young leaders like Mr. Premadasa and Navin Disanayak and a couple of others also can come forward. So that is one. Thirdly, the UNP constitution will have to be discussed and negotiated, because at the moment the party leader has certain powers that seems to be excessive. So these powers also has to be rethink and negotiated. So that is one thing that party has to do. But again, most importantly, there are problems in the country, that the democratic space is being challenged. There's a shrinking of democratic space. Despite the various attempts by the government spokespeople, we can see that the freedom of expression and assembly association is gradually being threatened. So there need to be strategy for UNP to work with the other opposition parties and civil society in general to safeguard the rights of the people while supporting the development initiatives because there's a mandate. People voted for this president, so mandate is given. So we must support the good initiatives. In the same time, we must use the democratic space, the parliament, and other spheres to fight for the rights of the people. I think that should be the message.
Thank you very much. Sudharshana Gunawardene, former advisor to the Prime Minister. Sudharshana, from the 20 million people in Sri Lanka, 54, that is 5.4 million people voted in favor of Sajid Premadasa as the UNP candidate. Hence, it is a national issue. 25% of the population in Sri Lanka still has some sort of connection with the UNP, and hence that is why we are drilling you tonight on the show about the UNP. We now move our attention towards Kris Balthazaar, Sri Lanka Pojana Peribara Municipal Councillor, representing the Heavily Mount Lavinia Municipal Council. Kris, interestingly, tonight on the show you spoke about how the MCC is being brought through the back door. You spoke about how there is no parliamentary tradition within the UNP when it comes to bringing notions into play, and no one knew about the MCC, so on and so forth. As I've done in the past, I'm taking you back to the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime. Let's talk about how the army headquarters in Colombo was sold. No one was aware about it. It was sold to a private hotel. No one was aware. And when questioned at a media briefing, Minister Bandra Gunawardene did not even know the terms of reference, how this plot of land was given to the private hotel that has put up a massive structure today. Again, investments are good, but these are public money. These are our assets. These are the public's assets at the end of the day. How sure are you things of this sort will not happen under the leadership of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa?
See, in 2015, His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa is defeated. First is based on false allegations, and second is based on a few mistakes that he would have made during his tenure. We saw him releasing a prominent politician's sister for fraudulent money, for forged money. So like that, he made mistakes. And with those mistakes, the people came out, he was defeated, and then back again. The people who were deceived by most of the false stories. We heard about Lamborghinis, we heard about golden horses, we heard about, so many other stories. So people were deceived during that time. If say 2% of it was true, 98% would have been fabricated. So all this came to an end, and we saw a downfall of a government for the first time that, within such a short period of time, and of course the UMP's habit of losing one after the other, we saw it happen, and that's where, so I'm sure we learn by our mistakes. And also we are grooming youth to come forward. I myself, as I told you, where I was and where I am now, it's two different parties. Two different parties, two different atmospheres, and I must say, I don't regret that decision, and I'm way above where I was. So the grooming of the youth and bringing new faces without having the same old faces, be there, take over the working committee, be in the committee. It's not like that. We have a party that wants youth to come in, wants new faces, enhances with people. We had so many programs that have done it. We've proven it, and in time to come, we have actually no worries at all when it comes to.
Thank you very much.
We've learned by our mistakes.
Thank you very much, Kris, Sri Lanka Pojana Peribara Municipal Councillor. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on the show. Thank you very much, Sudharshana Gunawardene, former advisor to Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, for joining us tonight on the show as well. And thank you very much, of course, Mr. Lacille Silva, senior public servant, for joining us tonight on Face the Nation. Thank you very much, Deshan. Thank you very much, John, for joining us. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Good governance should be like air. Its existence need not be discussed, but its absence would make a huge difference. Take care. and good night.